I didn't always like myself. In fact, at one point in my not-so-recent past, my disgust of self led to cycles of abusive behavior that often put my life and health at risk. I was trapped in my own circle of hell. That phrase, circle of hell, what even is that? Coming from a Catholic and evangelical Protestant background, I don't remember learning about hell circles in any of my various educational aspects in those faiths. There was no nun, to my remembrance at least, who slapped my knuckles for not knowing the various circles of hell, and no Protestant elder threatened to excommunicate me for my lack of appreciation for the made-up story of Satan's home. But enter my recent reading of a book, The Way of Integrity, Finding the Path to Your True Self. In this work, queer sociologist and ex-Latter-day Saint Martha Beck uses the three-part poem, The Divine Comedy, to explore our human impulse to make understanding and reach some kind of enlightenment. She uses this poem, one that was written in 1320 by Italian poet and philosopher Dante Alighieri, as a metaphor for the human lived experience. In her work, she summarizes three basic truths that lead us to integrity. The first, our human suffering can be reduced through the process of integration, complete self-love and acceptance. Number two, the journey of self-love is a process that often feels like we are lost in a fog or perhaps even trapped in a circle of our own hell-making. And number three, paradise can be attained by living our truths out loud in every moment of our lives. Beck begins by suggesting that society and norms and mores all around us at the time of birth act as great pressures that work to transform our child's state of innate full integration into alterations of ourselves that bend to the pressures of conformity, changing us from fully integrated persons to the seekers of truth on the lifelong path to return to integration that she believes we all are. Perhaps you too can think of an aspect in your life where you feel something should be different, but your social networks around you pressure you to conform to something that feels off. Certainly, as a queer man, that's a lifelong fact for me. Like Beck, Dante's work first begins with the poem Inferno. In the Inferno, Dante awakens to find himself, quote, within a forest dark, for the straightforward path had been lost. Once he is visited by a spirit, we are introduced to those concepts of the circles of hell. Unique levels of hell for specific behaviors and prescribed punishments for each. And while the levels of hell may arguably be biblical in nature, the circular fashion of them aren't. So my use of the phrase, my own circle of hell, when describing my self-hate, can be attributed to Dante's work alone. So thanks, Dante. In addition to a dark wooded fog and the circles of hell, he sees a brilliant hill that looks golden and seems to be full of wholeness and happiness. Sounds great to me. But every time he tries to climb from the valley to the hilltop, he's returned to the valley exhausted and defeated. Dante sees this as the plight of the human experience, and Beck agrees. The struggle to move from the dark wood of error, as he refers to it, this foggy place that is unclear, towards some kind of wholeness or happiness. To me, this foggy place is what I experience when I forget to love myself and enter into those patterns of self-destruction. I know that the state of self-loathing isn't good for me, but at the time, I'm in a fog and I'm unsure how to return from it. It feels like that fog can't be lifted, no matter how many times I try to traverse the hillsides of my mind. It is in this exhaustive and tenuous loop that Dante experiences and is eventually rescued by a hero. Martha Beck reminds us that the works of literary giants like the scholar Joseph Campbell have collected those hero stories from a myriad of cultures around the planet, and they all share this common trait. Some kind of help eventually comes along. You can't be the hero alone. Someone is always there to aid the hero out of their peril. For me, it's finding and keeping unconditional love given to me by a spouse, a husband, friends, and my greater community. That complex act of loving me no matter what reminds me to love myself no matter what. For others, it may be a poem, a book, a yoga class, a friend or a mentor, or something else entirely, but there is always something, Beck argues. Many times in my past, it was a simplified understanding of God, where I would say things like, God is good all the time, and all the time God is good. Even in those moments, things like that lifted me out of the dark woods of error and reset me on a path toward finding my integrity again. Where has someone helped you in your own hero's story? Dr. Beck believes that we do not lose our integrity by being bad, but rather we lose our integrity by trying to be good. I really think there's some truth right there. We do not lose our integrity by being bad, but rather by trying to be good. I really love this. It fits with a Unitarian Universalist concept that I first learned about when reading Minister Rebecca Parker's book, Proverbs of Ashes. This construct that I was introduced to in the discussions of that book of original blessing. It's a theological juxtaposition to the clearly Calvinistic original sin model that many of us are used to. We are born innately sinful, but original blessing is the understanding that rather being full of evil and sin at birth, we are part of divine light and goodness. This is very similar to the argument made by Beck. We are all born with integrity. We are meant to live in peace. Looking at my life, the times I fall out of integrity are most definitely when I don't think I'm doing something bad. It's when I'm convinced I'm trying to do good. All my years of climbing and falling and climbing and falling out of my queerness were directly related to my inability to fully embrace my authenticity. It wasn't because I thought being gay was bad, per se. It was that I had an overwhelmingly societal pressure to be good, in this case, straight. Similarly, as a white man, my many years, especially as a Southern white man, my many, many years of refusing to address my own internal biases was a result of me wanting so desperately to be a good white Southerner, rather than any direct feelings that I was inherently racist. Even when I did not think of myself as racist, I was. This thinking about ourselves and struggling through our own infernos is a key tenet of our faith movement as well. I think that this is why our justice work is so equated to spiritual work in our faith. Self-exploration and justice-making are how we as Unitarian Universalists interweave our journey. We see nods to that in our principles, though not explicit. Our fourth principle, for example, suggests that we lift up a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. I see Dante's work as an allegory to this very important principle. Our ability to seek out and embrace our truths and live into our integrity frees our hearts and minds to begin the work of enlightenment. Dante's story shows us that traversing the dark woods of error can lead us out of the inferno and on to the second section of that divine comedy, Purgatorio, or Purgatory. It's represented in the story as a huge mountain that is super steep. And Dante says that in order to traverse that mountain and reach paradise, you must have incredible yearning. Yearning. That's an interesting word to me. So I think I would like us all to try something, if you will. I promise I won't make you chant again. But I would like you to center yourself in the space that you are, whether you're on the patio, in the room with us, or online. And just for a moment, think about something that you want. Something that you want. And whatever that is, hold that image in your mind for a moment. This is your want. Now I invite us all to use our imagination and remember a moment where you had a gut-wrenching nightmare. We all know those moments. The ones where the nightmare was so vivid, so real that you wake up physically drained and scared and in need of something. Picture that moment and now think about what it is in that moment you yearn for. And just hold those two images, what you want versus what you yearn for. Beck says that when she does this with audiences all over the world, the answers to the first question of our wants are almost always material things. A better house, a new car, a better job, more money. But the answers to the yearning, when our hearts are in a space of deep need or fear, those are almost exclusively intangible feeling states like love, peace, freedom, belonging, or other feeling phrases. Does that track for you? How were your images similar? How were they different? Our yearning propels us up the hill of purgatory. Those deeply held desires motivate our human experience and interactions. They can inform our relationships, our decisions, and even our treatment of self and others. Beck argues that once we recognize those yearnings and what we really want out of life, it's only then that we begin progress toward integrity. Peace itself becomes more attainable. Just like in our congregational chant, the words remind us that we are indeed made for peace. But the cacophony of sound created when we join in community reminds us that even with support, it can sometimes be hard to hear that truth through the messiness of our own lives. Beck says that embracing our own truths and living them out loud is the way that we can be transported to our own paradise, the final poem in Dante's Divine Comedy, Paradiso. Now, I share all of this with you, and I have no idea if any of it is true or if you accept any of it. And that's okay. It's why I became a minister. I value the unknown, that great mystery that for me sits somewhere between our scientific knowledge and our unexplainable human experiences. Those magical things that happen when we drop our defenses, live into our integrity, and surround ourselves in community. Sometimes I feel like I've made it to paradise, but honestly, most of the time for me, it's struggling up the mountain of purgatory, trying desperately not to fall all the way back into the dark woods of error. I didn't always like myself, and sometimes I still don't. But I remain committed to the work of moving myself through the inferno, up that unrelenting mountain of purgatory, in the hope that eventually I find my own paradise. The journey is long and difficult, but in this faith tradition and in this congregation, I know none of us do it alone.